before, love is all you need, but what happens when that love falls apart? Divorce is messy, and money generally makes things worse, not better, especially when one spouse earns significantly more money than the other spouse. So we're talking about a case here involves Eleanor McCain. She's the heir to the McCain family fortune. She has been ordered by a judge to help pay her estranged husband's legal bills. It's a massive case. You know, they signed a marriage agreement where Miss McCain agreed to pay Jeff Melanson a lump sum of $5 million if their union broke down. It broke down, and she doesn't want to pay now, and he's been asking that she pays his legal fees. She's arguing that, you know, he didn't deserve to have his legal costs covered because he went on a spending spree since the court case began, traveling extensively, including California, Yukon, and British Columbia. In this case, and as often as the case, the wealthier party being asked to pay for their spouse's legal fees. And there's nothing uncommon about that, but it happens all the time. But I thought this case is just getting so much attention. And it is sort of bizarre because there's a role reversal. I thought we talked to Danielle Simard, who is Daniel Simard is the family lawyer at Shulman Law Firm. Daniel, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, Kelly.
So what makes this story so newsworthy?
Well, obviously the wealth of the parties makes it newsworthy. The name of the parties makes it newsworthy. I don't know so much if this recent decision is that newsworthy in itself.
Is it the fact, though, that we are uncomfortable by the story? Is that why do you think it gets a lot of press? I mean, she is the breadwinner here. She has this huge inheritance. I think she can live off, I think she makes $4 million, without doing anything if she didn't want to from the money from, that she has as the heiress. He was making about $400,000, I think, and, is in huge debt now. Are we now, as a society, is one of the reasons why we're interested is because the wealthier party is a woman and her husband is the one asking for money? I mean, how often does this happen?
I certainly think that's part of it, but I think that, the general population has a curiosity, I believe, into the intricacies of a wealthy family such as the McCains. So I think not only the gender dynamic at play, but just the immense wealth that one of the parties has is probably what underlies the curiosity for this particular case.
What can the average person learn from this case? I mean, they did have an agreement, a marriage agreement, and, clearly she now wants to seek an annulment because she doesn't want to pay him for that, I'm guessing.
Well, I think first and foremost, I think the average party person can realize that court is not certain. There's not much certainty always in court. So there was a contract. It was probably signed and drafted with two lawyers by each party, and now we still have a court case that has received, significant publicity, even though to the average person they may see it as, well, what happened here? There was a marriage contract signed. There was lawyers involved. Why is there even a case here? Mm-hmm. So I think that's the first point that the, average population can draw from this. And I think the second point is that, things don't always hold up in court as they should, which sort of relates to the first point.
Right. It seems to me, when you hear about these stories, usually it's the man in the power position and the woman asking for assistance. And it seems like, the knee-jerk reaction is we seem to be okay or used to that. But then when it's the man in that situation, we look at it and think, well, wow, that seems odd.
Well, I think a part of that goes back, in time where men were predominantly the breadwinners and they were in control of the finances, and I think that's some of where this law, or underlying this law, is of one party to pay the other's costs on an interim basis. I just want to clarify one point. It's not a common thing. It's common to pay costs at the end of a trial. Mm-hmm. On an interim basis, to pay costs for future steps, it's not a very common occurrence. So there is a distinction there by the losing party paying costs at the end of a trial or at the end of a motion, as opposed to what happened here is that Ms. McCain has been ordered to pay an advance to assist Mr. Melanson pay for his legal fees. It's a very rare event.
How easy is it to get out of a prenup?
Prenups are supposed to be very difficult to get out of if they're done correctly. I mean, there's no hard and fast rules of how if a prenup can fall apart, but generally speaking, you should have independent legal advice. You should have a full exchange of financial disclosure. In other words, both parties should say, look, this is what I'm worth, and this is what you could potentially have, but notwithstanding, we're going to enter in this agreement to agree to this. And those are the two main components, and naturally, of course, it should be drafted properly, witnessed and signed, etc.
Is the reason why most situations work out like this, where the wealthier party has to make sure that things are even, so that the person that doesn't have the money actually can compete with the lawyers that person's wealth can buy them?
That's pretty much a general summary of what happened here. But this is a little bit still rare of a scenario. I mean, it developed with, just as an example, where a wealthy, non-custodial parent had unlimited resources and they could litigate the issues of custody and access, whereas, maybe the mother at the time didn't have any resources to respond to this, and it would be to deter disadvantage.
Yeah, in this situation, I don't think they have kids at all.
No, exactly. In this case here, though, I do think the judge took into consideration that it seemed quite clear that he was going to be entitled to the $5 million pursuant to the marriage contract, and this money is going to be taken from that if ultimately awarded, or, as the judge put it, I believe, it will be repaid if the case is entirely successful. So it's not an outright, here's the money. I think the judge sort of indicated by that ruling that she felt that he was probably entitled to it in any event.
Well, it's an interesting story, and I'm sure it will continue. I mean, Eleanor McCain has quite a lot of money, and she's going to fight this tooth and nail, it sounds. Daniel, I appreciate you joining us.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Thanks for being here. Daniel Simard is a family law lawyer at Shulman Law Firm. Joins us on this Valentine's Day. 3:51.